Hello, this is Aisha, and I will be doing my presentation on Albert Bandura's social learning theory. This is a photo of Albert Bandura and a well-known quote of his that I think encompasses the basis of social learning theory that states, "Learning would be exceedingly laborious, not to mention hazardous, if people had to rely solely on the effects of their own actions to inform them what to do." As we get further into my presentation, I hope that you will see how this quote relates to social learning theory. Social learning theory is not solely a nursing theory, but rather a theory of human behavior that can be applied to psychology, sociology, and nursing. It focuses on learning as a cognitive process that occurs within a social environment and originates from Bandura's theory that most human behavior is learned observationally and modeled. The purpose of social learning theory is to explain human behavior, which Bandura states is based on a continuous reciprocal interaction between environmental, personal, and behavioral factors. This diagram depicts that reciprocal relationship and how they connect. These factors determine human behavior and impact the observational learning process, which is the other component of Bandura's theory. Cognitive factors are personal and include attitude, expectations, and knowledge. Environmental factors include social norms and influence on others, as in the ability to change your own environment. Behavioral factors include skills and self-efficacy. And as I mentioned, there is a continuous reciprocal interaction between these factors, and they directly influence how one responds to observational learning and modeling of behavior. Observational learning is the basis of social learning theory. This is the theory that people learn from one another through observation, imitation, and modeling of behavior. There are 4 stages to the observational learning process. First is attention, which is the observation of environmental stimuli. Next is retention, in which the observed behavior is retained in memory. Next is reproduction, where the observation is converted into modeled behavior. And lastly is motivation, in which Bandura believes the observer must have incentive to model the action. Each of these stages are influenced by the cognitive, environmental, and behavioral factors I mentioned earlier. For example, one must have the skills to model the learned behavior. And likewise, attitude may influence the motivation to model the action. Bandura's theory is well organized with clear links between the factors that determine behavior. The observational learning process is systematic. The stages of observational learning are well defined and the theory is consistent, including the factors that influence learned behavior. The ultimate outcome is learned behavior or determining the factors that influence the learned behavior, and this is consistent among all research that applies Bandura's theory. Social learning theory can be applied across cultures and within all social contexts and settings. That's because observations can occur everywhere, and people are learning observationally, often without even realizing it. Bandura's theory has been applied to a wide range of settings and is seen in nursing education as well as practice. Social learning theory has been applied to research in pediatric development, particularly to gender identification and personality trait development, such as aggression. Research supports role modeling in nursing practices between the novice nurse and mentor. For example, as new nurses, we likely learned observationally without even realizing it and may have modeled behaviors from our preceptors. Nursing education has made strides with social learning theory in the classroom, utilizing group learning and simulation labs. Social learning theory can be applied to patient education as well, and assessing the factors that may influence a patient's learning or motivation to model behavior. It can also be seen in patient education topics like smoking cessation, addiction counseling, and health promotion. The first study that applied social learning theory was conducted by Bandura himself and was on the development of childhood aggression. This study involved exposing a group of children to an adult behaving aggressively towards a clown doll. There was also a non-aggressive model in which the adult played quietly with the doll, as well as a control group with no model shown. After observing the modeled behavior, the children from each group were left alone in the room with the doll, and their behavior was observed. The results of the study indicated that the children observed the aggressive behavior were more likely to exhibit aggressive responses towards the doll than those who were in the non-aggressive or control groups. This study supported Bandura's social learning theory. The next study was a longitudinal study on smoking and smoking cessation to determine factors that influence smoking habits. The study found that social network is relevant to smoking, and smoking behavior spreads through close contacts. Smoking cessation was linked to the idea that smoking is increasingly marginalized socially. The study also found that interconnected groups stop smoking in clusters. For example, smoking cessation by a spouse decreased a person's chances of smoking by 67%. A sibling decreased chance of smoking by 25%. A close friend decreased chances of smoking by 36%, and a coworker decreased chances by 34%. The next study was conducted in a hospital setting among nurses and focused on education regarding PICC line management to prevent occlusion. The intervention was a vascular access update course that aimed to increase self-efficacy on PICC line management. This study targeted the behavioral and cognitive factors that Bandura proposes influence learning, and proposed that increasing the behavioral factor of self-efficacy and personal factor of knowledge would make nurses motivated to model the learned behavior of the course. After the course, complete PICC occlusion rate dropped from 29% to 8.5%, and there was a significant net gain in knowledge and self-efficacy reported by nursing. The final study I've included is on self-care behaviors in prediabetes. This study utilized a questionnaire to collect data on factors that influence behavior, including personal and environmental factors. They found that the largest influence on health-promoting self-care behaviors were self-efficacy, diabetes history, perceptions of empowerment process, and prediabetes knowledge. I found this study interesting because knowing the factors that are impeding your patient from participating in their self-care is important and can help tailor patient education, making it more patient-centered to fit their specific needs. Currently, I think social learning theory provides a great conceptual model for explaining human behavior and development, and it can be used to enhance education in the clinical setting. Because observations can occur at any time and social exposure is becoming more prominent everywhere through television, social media accounts, and the internet, I believe that observational learning will continue to be relevant. I would be interested to see future research on observational learning as it relates to social media and computer-mediated technology. Social learning theory is complex and not easily measured or assessed due to the many factors that can influence learning. I do believe that it is most easily applied in a classroom or education environment rather than a clinical setting. Current research and practice is mostly non-experimental design. However, I do think that current studies support the acquisition of knowledge for evidence-based practice, particularly with regards to addressing gaps in nursing and patient education and developing a better understanding of the factors that influence learning behaviors. Here are my references. And I thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And I hope that you learned something about Bandura's social learning theory that you can apply. Thank you.